Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so it has been a hot minute since we've talked about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but I should probably preface this. There's a big reason for that. So, starting off, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or at least for Part 6, I think for Part 7 onward they will have a new distributor, I'm pretty sure, from what I saw. But essentially what happens is, Part 1 through 5 was produced by Crunchyroll. They owns the rights to the series, they distributed the series on their streaming service, and that was how everybody got through, and it was licensed through them. And so they released the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure weekly throughout the series, and then up through Part 5 was produced like that. Then Netflix decided to buy the rights to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I think they got specifically they bought the distribution rights to Part 6, which is what we're going to be reviewing in a couple of seconds. There's an explanation for this, but unfortunately Part 6 got bought up by Netflix, and they kind of screwed up the series a little bit. Not necessarily in terms of like writing or anything like that. I'm pretty sure like the Lucky Land Communications, the producers of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure are still very much responsible for the series. But the problem was Netflix and the release schedule is atrocious. And I've talked about this previously. Netflix has an atrocious release schedule. Essentially what happened was they bought up Part 6 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stone Ocean. And what happened was that instead of releasing it weekly, which is what the series had been doing up until that point, they decided to release a whole bunch of episodes at once. Hold on to them for however long that was. Several months, I think, it took for them to release more of it. And then they proceeded to release, that. They just released a whole wave of episodes as a bunch, which everybody finished in like a week. They then killed the hype, and then they came back, and there was like, Netflix, this is your fault. You should, they're trying to get people hyped on their social media, but it's like, they killed the hype. There is no hype for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because you can't watch it weekly anymore because they bought it. So, yeah, and I think Lucky Land's Communication learned their lesson partnering with Netflix, because from what I saw in the news, they are probably not going to be going through Netflix again for Part 7 whenever that gets animated, because unfortunately, like, and also I think the David Productions also animates the series, but regardless, somebody decided to partner through Netflix. Probably the creator of it, Hirohiko Araki. He probably partnered with it, then realized what he had done after the fact, and now he had to finish out his deal and move to another distributor. But yeah, Netflix has a problem with anime. Like, they're not good at, the issue is that they release this is a problem they've had for a long time now. But the issue is that they release everything all at once, and then the hype dies down after like a week, because everybody finishes it almost immediately. And then they're like, oh, well, nobody's talking about our show anymore, how about we cancel it? And that is unfortunately what Netflix does. They release everything they release everything all at once. Nobody's able to have a discussion about it because it got released all at once, and they finish it immediately. And then they're surprised that nobody is staying on their site for prolonged periods of time, and then they cancel the show because it stops being popular. They've unfortunately done that with a couple of their shows at this point, and it will never not make me mad. But in any case, Stone Ocean. That's my little vent about Netflix to start off the review. But honestly, I like the first episode of Stone Ocean. I just wish it was under a different publisher, because as I said, Netflix is bad with release schedules. They are the worst when it comes to release schedules, and Stone Ocean took that to its logical extreme, where it was several months before the next big chunk of story came out for what is in the story-wise for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the big grand finale for the past 6 parts of this. Like, it is this big grand finale that ties up everything. And it's this big ending that is referential to other parts. It brings back story arcs for a lot of other parts. It's a big ending to end off parts one, the story arc that was started in part 1 with Theo and Jonathan, and now it builds to this final story arc where they finally confront all of their enemies and that kind of thing. Like, it's this bit, like, they do confront the final antagonist, and after this there's a reboot, which is what part 7 and 8 are. So yeah, we'll get to that, but there's a big story related reason for that later. But yeah, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean is kind of this big story thing, and that's probably why Netflix wanted it. They knew it was going to be this big event, and this big event to finally get animated, so they bought it. But yeah, the story has a pretty interesting introduction. So to its protagonist, and also kind of just barely skirts under what is possible under the Shonen Jump label, because after this, I think the series goes to seinen, becomes a seinen series, I think, which steers to be a bit more mature. But of course, immediately trying to. But of course, getting into the review. The series actually does start like this. As I said, this does literally just skirt directly under what is allowed at Shonen Jump. But the episode starts when we find out that Jolyne, our protagonist, has gotten into a bit of trouble. She has been arrested for an incident that she was involved with. We don't get the full details of the incident until later, but she's very insistent on her. But she is established to be very insistent on her innocence. But we'll get to that. But in case, starting off the episode after this incident, Jolyne is put in a cell underneath it, and she is currently despairing in her cell for reasons that we'll get into. But of course, there's another woman next to her in the cell next to her, and demands to know what she's so upset about. And of course, Jolyne just declares that her life is over. But of course, the other woman is curious what she's actually talking about, and Jolyne can't really bring herself to say it at first, which of course causes this woman to become even more interested in what Jolyne needs to say. But Jolyne eventually does spit it out that she was, essentially the episode. This is what I said. It gets very risque at the start here, but it establishes that she got caught touching herself by a guard by a younger guard. And this, of course, causes the person next to her in the cell next to her to immediately think that's hilarious. And after Jolyne explains that, yeah, it was a younger guard, she was, of course, the other woman is, of course, very amused about the fact that she got caught. Which and of course, Jolyne just declares that she's never going to do that again. Like, as long as she lives, she's not going to touch herself inappropriately. But of course, we then find out that one of the women next to her, this woman with a bunch of piercings, like 2 cells down from both of them, then proceeds to point out that she doesn't know what she's whining about, pointing out that and of course the woman comes to Jolyne's defense because this woman is just mouthing off to her, and is of course very insistent that she shouldn't have gotten caught, pointing out that it is something that you should be doing in private and that you should be doing that in prison, which of course causes Jolyne to then proceed to snap back at the woman, and in the process reveals a pretty interesting trick that she's seemingly picked up by her father. We'll get to that, but we find out that she has actually looked into. She actually is able to point out that that you can tell a bunch of people by reading their ring finger, and does note that the woman's ring finger is very dirty up to the knuckle, and then concludes from that she's in jail for sexual assault, which of course causes the woman to immediately back down once Jolyne kind of has her pegged, and And the other woman who has since become friends with Jolyne at this point, trying kind of learning a little bit more about her and what kind of person she is, does kind of point out how she actually knew that, which while Jolyne just sits there ominously knowing that I know how to do that. I can read somebody, but of course it's at this point where some guards come in and immediately start escorting people out of the prison, and of course it's at this point where the woman next to in the cell next to Jolyne, as their handcuffs put on and are being escorted out of the prison, the woman asks Jolyne what she's in for, and Jolyne proceeds to proclaim that she's innocent. And of course it is at this point where Jolyne proceeds to meet with her lawyer when she's out of the holding cell she's in. She is brought before her lawyer. We'll get to him. Don't worry, we'll get to him. But here her lawyer points out that she proclaims that she's paying him good money to prove her innocence, and of course he admits that he's doing his best, but also refers to her as JoJo, which of course she tells him not to call her that, pointing out that only her mom ever calls her JoJo. But of course then proceeds to, and then of course once he realizes his mistake, he starts calling her Jolyne for the rest of the episode. But she then proceeds to then wonder what exactly it was how her mother is, pointing out that she knows she's pointing out that she wants to see her because, she's in prison and everything, and she wants to talk to her mom. But of course we find out from her lawyer that her mom is a bit faint-hearted and isn't dealing too well with it, but also admits that she's currently trying to get in contact with Jolyne's father. And he proceeds to reveal that he has a pendant from her father that he wanted her to have on the off chance she got into trouble. And of course, Jolyne is a little confused at first, but after taking it, she's confused what the lawyer's trying to say about her father, and obviously, and then it's at this point where her finger gets pricked by the pendant, which of course causes Jolyne to start reeling because her finger starts bleeding extremely. And it's this point where the pendant actually pops open to reveal a piece of the stand arrow inside, and it's of course immediately established that Jolyne has been pierced by the stand arrow, which means she's going to develop a stand in a couple of minutes. And it is of course established that she does have the developmental potential for a stand because she doesn't die immediately. It's established in the series that if someone gets pierced by the stand arrow and they don't have a stand, it's established that if they'll either develop a stand or die. Jolyne obviously doesn't die by the end of the episode. So, and actually she doesn't die by the end of the scene, but then of course clutching her hand because it's currently bleeding, then proceeds to demand to know where the lawyer found it and who exactly it is that she's reaching out to. Of course her lawyer points out that her mom is trying to reach out to her dad, pointing out that since his only daughter is in prison, they're trying to arrange everything for him to come see her and give her some advice and everything like that. And of course Jolyne is a little confused and opens up the pendant, and we find out that her father is actually Jotaro. We find out that Jotaro from part 3 is her father, and we find out he's not a particularly good one. We find out that he's a marine biologist, is constantly busy with work, and never actually sees his daughter. So we actually find out that she's kind of a deadbeat dad. He literally treats his daughter he gave birth to a daughter, but he never actually makes an effort to see her, unfortunately. I'm assuming there's a reason for that. I'm assuming Jotaro has his reasons, because that's not how Jotaro has been characterized before. So I'm curious. So he's definitely got his. So I'm sure he definitely has his reasons for not seeing his daughter or anything like that. There's definitely got to be a reason for that. I'm predicting that now. But of course, Jolyne starts looking at the picture of her father, but in the time it takes for her to pick up the pendant, her finger has since healed, save for a small hole in it, and she's curious what exactly it is what had happened to her. But of course, upset at her father for never coming to see her, throws his pendant away, declaring that she doesn't need his cursed locket to survive in prison, and of course it proceeds to bounce around her holding cell before falling down the drain. At which point her lawyer proceeds to tell her that ultimately there'll be a court date later because she has 2 priors, and there's a very good possibility that she'll be arrested without parole if she goes to prison. And of course Jolyne insists that this is why she hired the lawyer in the first place, to make sure she doesn't go to prison for a prolonged period of time. Also points out that it's not really that big a deal in terms of getting arrested, pointing out that her quote-unquote prior was her stealing a bike by accident. She forgot to ask if she could borrow the bike. She stole it, and that was what she got arrested for. So yeah, she explains that. But of course the lawyer points out that he fully believes her, and then proceeds to claim that in the meantime, prior to her trial, she will actually be put in a holding cell in Dolphin Street Prison, Green Dolphin Street Prison, which is the primary setting of Part 6. So and of course it claims that for the time being to just sit tight. He'll meet with her later once the court date is a bit more settled, and he'll be able to get more information out of her and her story. So of course, it's at this point where Jolyne is, of course, escorted to Green Dolphin Street Prison, and the narrator proceeds to rattle off a series of statistics about Green Dolphin Street Prison, about how many inmates it has, about how it's one of the biggest maximums, one of the biggest prisons in the world. It has over 1,000 inmates in it, and it's a lot of which are a mix of men, women, and minors who committed a misdemeanor. So it's essentially establishes that it's full of prisoners that from a bunch of different walks of life and a bunch of different people. So it's immediately established that Greenville Dolphin Street Prison kind of has a lot of people in it, and Jolyne is probably going to be one of them if she doesn't watch herself. And of course Jolyne, we find out to Jolyne and the woman she was talking with earlier. They're currently riding on the bus. And then proceeds to, and of course they proceed to start talking, and as they're kind of about to go into prison, it's this point where this woman then proceeds to tell Jolyne that she better be lucky and make sure she has some money on her. And of course Jolyne is a little confused as to how she's supposed to actually pull this off. Pointing out that there's no way she's going to be able to hide her money, and also points out that she's probably not going to need money because she's only going to be in a holding cell. She's not worried about something happening to her while she's in prison. But of course, this woman proceeds to point out that she's just being sure, and that she should consider some hiding places if she does want money on her next visit. And of course, Jolyne proceeds to wonder where exactly it is that she's supposed to hide it. Pointing out that she thought it was just a movie thing where people would hide money up their butt and smuggle it in. But of course, the woman proceeds to point out that actually that is not how it works. Unfortunately, that is the first place guards check, so you can't really hide money in up your butt. But of course, curious as to how exactly it is that. How exactly it is that she smuggled it in, then guesses that the woman has breast implants that are hollow inside and she hid money in them, which of course causes the woman to blush, and Jolyne realizes that she was spot on the money, admitting that she was just kidding and she wasn't actually expecting this woman to actually be hiding money in her breasts. Which of course this woman then proceeds to show Jolyne her top scars, and does point out that they bleed a little bit, but if she reaches inside of them, she can in fact pull some money out, and that is where she hides her money. So of course Jolyne is amazed that she was able to figure that out. But then here's somebody talking about how about how they're about to arrive, and it's another 10 miles before they arrive. But and of course, Jolyne proceeds to relay that information to her new friend, which of course the new friend points out there's no possibility that Jolyne would have heard that from where they are, because she points out that she would have heard them in the cabin. But then the person pulls up and they do admit that, yeah, the exact same conversation plays out, which confuses both Jolyne and the new woman. But of course, the new woman this other woman is very much impressed with Jolyne's ability to kind of do some fortune telling stuff, and wonders how she did it. And Jolyne herself admits she doesn't really know, pointing out that she's been feeling weird ever since her father's pendant pricked her. So she has no idea what exactly it is that's going on with her. And but of course, the woman, impressed regardless, then introduces herself as Hermes Costello. And Hermes admits that she's kind of impressed with Jolyne and would like to get to know her better, but and is why she's been giving her so much advice, because she likes her. But it is at this point where they arrive at Green Dolphin Street Prison, and Jolyne is immediately escorted out to her holding cell. But Hermes is then told by the guards that that she is not supposed to be leaving yet, and that her stop isn't for a little bit yet. At which point, Jolyne is escorted out of the bus that arrives at Green Dolphin Street Prison and is brought before the doors while they wait for somebody to open them up so they can get inside. At which point she hears two guards in the bus harassing Hermes for her money, which of course the episode frames it as them literally abusing her to get the money out of her, and it's two guys beating up a girl, which also isn't a great look. But of course, Jolyne is very much confused as to how exactly it is she's able to know what's going on in the bus. And while the guards are tries to talk to the guards about it, but the guards just insist that she stay facing forward, don't talk to anybody, don't say anything. Which of course causes Jolyne to become confused, pointing out that obviously the guards didn't say anything. At which point she finally figures out that she has in fact manifested a stand. Much to her bewilderment, because she has no idea what's going on, and the guards don't know what's going on either, because they can't see her stand. They are not stand users. Her stand is established. Her stand doesn't have a name yet, but it's established to at first be a series of threads, which are emerging from her hand, and she has no idea what they do. But of course realizes that one of the threads is extended off toward the bus with Hermes on it, which is currently driving off, and they're currently still trying to shake her down for all of her money. At which point the guard finally suspects her secret hiding place, and points out that her boobs seem suspicious. So they decide to get ready to smack her around a little bit more and get the money out of her. But at which point Jolyne, not really realizing what she does at first, but Jolyne proceeds to use her stand to defend Hermes, despite being a couple of miles away at this point. But of course Hermes and the guards are completely confused. But essentially, a thread emerges, wraps around the guy's nightstick. His arm is unable to move. But then there's blood sliding down the thread, and he is obviously, both men are obviously very confused. At which point they discover that one of the guard's ears has been sliced clean off, and when Jolyne looks down at her hand, she discovers the 20 that they stole off the guards, which had been tucked behind the man's ear, is now affixed to the back of her hand. Now, very much confused as to what exactly it is this new power is that she's manifested, and curious what she just did. She is then escorted to her holding cell, the next day she's brought before her lawyer, and of course her lawyer has many questions about about her story and what has happened. And of course he is doing his best to fight for Jolyne's innocence, as he claims. But he then proceeds to ask her a very important question: was she behind the wheel when the accident occurred? And of course, we then proceed to get a flashback from Jolyne's perspective of the accident. We find out that she is actually with her boyfriend Romeo, and which is very on the nose. But Jolyne is with her boyfriend Romeo, and she is notably a lot more bubbly than she's been introduced currently. Which I guess prison does do that to you. But she is of course introduced as a. And she is currently trying to think of a cute pet name to call Romeo. She eventually settles on Rochu, which, of course, he admits is very embarrassing, and he doesn't want his friends hearing that. But, of course, she proceeds to point out that it's cute, and points out that she would love for Romeo to call her Jojo, something that she points out that only her mom calls her, something that she was established only her mom is allowed to call her. So, it is definitely a sign of trust. But, of course, pointing out that it's a little embarrassing to call themselves pet names, he then asks Jolyne for the bottle of alcohol that she's holding, and she does, of course, insist that he's not allowed to have it because it's got a 10% alcohol concentration. He, of course, is driving, so and of course, this causes him to become distracted, and in the process, they accidentally hit a guy and run him over. Of course, neither Romeo nor Jolyne know what has happened. They're just panicking because they hit something. And they have no idea what happened. At which point Jolyne sees the guy's glasses embedded in the windshield, and realizing now exactly what happened, they immediately jump out of the car and do discover the guy strung up in a tree, seemingly dead. I say seemingly. Getting to that, but of course they immediately panic, and Jolyne, of course, being responsible, wants to immediately call the police, but Romeo is, of course, insistent that they not do that, pointing out that if he goes to prison, his life will be over. He can't marry her anymore, and it's very clear that he is on some level psychologically manipulating her, because he's very much being like, "Don't you love me? Don't you want to help me get rid of this guy so that I don't go to prison?" and all those kinds of things. But and of course, Jolyne eventually does decide to do it. Grabs the guy, and of course, we also find out that Romeo's swearing up and down that this guy is dead. Like he goes over, touches the guy strung up in the tree, insists that he's dead, and then and also there's a truck coming, so they need to act quickly. So they proceed to hide the guy in the trunk of Romeo's car, claim the car was stolen, and then that's all. That's the only information we're given. And of course, having seen this flashback, Jolyne is insisting that she can tell her that she then proceeds to ask her lawyer what exactly it is that Romeo has said, because obviously he has his own side of the story. He would have said something as well to the lawyer, and the lawyer insists that he wasn't the one that the car was stolen and it wasn't his, which of course causes Jolyne to become upset a little bit when she realizes that Romeo is in fact doubling down on his story. So she realizes she does need to, and it is interesting, but it does show her loyalty to her boyfriend, because she does decide not to tell her lawyer that what happened, which of course causes her lawyer to become upset, but he understands. At which point he proceeds to, and this is where they start explaining. So this is where they start saying things up. But he proceeds to explain that what plea bargaining is to her, pointing out that if she pleads with the plea bargaining, she will absolutely go to prison. But she will go to prison for far less time than she was established, for like a year, and then she'll be done. She'll be fine. But of course, realizing that that's a pretty good deal compared to the 5 that she would be serving for manslaughter and vehicular negligence, does agree to plea bargain. At which point she's brought into court by her lawyer, and of course her lawyer the judge at first seems fair. Like, he goes through into the details about the entire case about how Jolyne has pleaded to the plea bargaining, and that's obviously it wasn't premeditated. It was an accident, and does proceed to point out that since they accidentally run somebody over, it wasn't entirely for her fault that he got injured. But then proceeds to reveal, and this is where the big twist comes in, that the guy wasn't dead when he got hit. As it turns out, when they dispose of the body is when he actually died. Much to Jolyne's confusion, because she thought he was dead when he got run over. And of course, it's at this point where the lawyer is suddenly framed in a far more sinister light, and is framed as being far more sinister. And Jolyne is, of course, trying to figure out what exactly is going on, as the judge proceeds to sentence her to 15 years in prison for murder, which of course causes her to become very, very visibly confused. She has no idea what's going on. And of course, the lawyer is obviously just being very nonchalant, being like, "I'm sorry I couldn't help you more, but good day." He then proceeds to just walk out of the courtroom, with Jolyne, of course, fighting with the guards as she's being arrested and getting ready to be hauled off to prison. She's, of course, angry that she had been tricked and has been sentenced to 15 years instead of 1. So, of course, it's at this point where she's very confused as to what's going on, and it's at this point where we find out why the lawyer actually sentenced her to 15 years, got her sentenced to 15 years. As it turns out, Romeo has a very rich father, and arranged for Jolyne to take the fall so that his son didn't go to prison. And of course, he then proceeds to meet with Romeo, who was, of course, obviously very shooken up about the fact that he's not going to go to jail, and that Jolyne is going to jail instead, but does thank the lawyer for his service, and the lawyer does proceed to respond, "Thank your rich father," at which point he walks out. Jolyne, of course, hears all of this via her stand, and is obviously very angry about her being betrayed by both her boyfriend and her lawyer. She is not happy, but of course, having been officially sentenced to 15 years, essentially her whole entire life at this point, her entire youth has been sentenced to prison. She is of course brought to Green Dolphin Street Prison, and of course is processed as an inmate. She is of course. She's obviously angry the entire time she's being processed as an inmate, but she's brought before two women guards, who then proceed to explain how the ropes everything to her. She's told that she's going to have a prison number. It'll be her name as well as her actual given name by her parents, and they tell her that when her number is called, she will respond to it, no questions asked. So she might as well get it drilled into her head. This, of course, it's at this point where they then proceed to be these are two older women. They're not particularly pretty, but they, of course, are very insistent. They're, of course, very insistent that she comply with them, and then proceed to ask her to strip all the way down, with the more heavy-set woman of the two, pointing out to her compadre that they need to humiliate the prisoners, so that they know who's in charge. But it's, of course, at this point where Jolyne just kind of leans into it. Like, it's a very funny scene. But Jolyne, of course, strips completely down, and immediately like, "Oh, is this good? Do you want me to get on all fours? Do you want me to," and a whole bunch of sexual innuendo jokes, which is funny. And of course, the two women guards are completely flabbergasted that Jolyne is just kind of leaning into it. But of course, the end is obviously giving them a bit of a show and deliberately presenting herself to them. But of course, after their quote-unquote stripped down and cavity search, she is immediately put in front for her mugshot. At which point, when she's doing her sideways mugshot, she sees her lawyer out of the window, and quickly realizes that he's going to get away, and insists that he's not going to let him get away with what he did. So, of course, she proceeds to rack her brain about how she's going to get her revenge on him. So, and of course, we do find out that the lawyer eventually returns to his law firm. Eventually, is about to leave leave the prison. He is, of course, upset. He is, of course, very visibly, upset about the fact that he has to spend time in a prison and breathe air with the prisoners. He's not happy, but also is putting a big show that he wishes there was more that he could do to save Jolyne, and it was unfortunate that he got sentenced to 15 years. But of course, his prisoner is one of the other people in the guards, who is kind of a old friend of him. He's not a particularly handsome man. He looks like a goldfish, but he of course gives the lawyer a note from her, pointing out that he was a great lawyer, and does point out that he got a note from her, pointing out that it's already been inspected and it should be fine. And of course, the lawyer is kind of struggling to breathe a little bit because it's too hot, but or at least he thinks he insists that it's way too hot. At which point, he proceeds to open the letter and says, "Pass it along to him. This will be enjoy the last breath, your last cold hot air because it'll be the last hot air that you'll be hot and uncomfortable forever. Which, of course, causes the lawyer to become confused. He has no idea what exactly this is referring to, but he then proceeds to get into his car, but confused, crumbles up the note, puts it on the chair, and then proceeds to get ready to drive. Then proceeds to drive off and turns on the air conditioning, pointing out that it's still way too hot. At which point, it's discovered what Jolyne had actually done. So, as it turns out, Jolyne had actually figured out another application for her stand, which is that she can actually break it up into pieces. We discover that her hand is bleeding slightly, but she broke it out. She's able to break her stand up into pieces, and several of those pieces had wrapped around the lawyer's neck. And when he turned on the AC, her stand had started drying out, which caused him to start suffocating. And unable to kind of turn the AC off so that and get the threads off his neck, he too late is able to do that, but he winds up crashing into a wall on the highway leading to Green Dolphin Street Prison, and he dies in a car accident. And of course, the only evidence that it suggested was foul play was, of course, the note Jolyne left him. And of course, she insists that while he's a bit out of range, she was able to find a new application for her stand to make sure that he got what he deserved. And of course, now realizing why her father wanted her to have the pendant, she then proceeds to declare that say goodbye to her first love, Romeo, for breaking her heart and putting her in prison. And of course, it's at this point where she realizes that her father wanted her to have the pendant to defend herself and use her stand to defend herself and keep herself safe while in prison. And now realizing that she's very curious as what she's going to do. She then also wonders where the pendant might have wandered up. At which point we find out that another inmate has actually smuggled it into the prison. So yeah, that's how the episode ends. So first and foremost, we're introduced to Hermes Costello, who is going to be one of Jolyne's main allies going forward. But also we're introduced to Jolyne herself and how the episode starts. So this series is going to be a prison break story. That is essentially that's how JoJo's has worked. All of the parts up until this point have been a different kind of story. And this one is a prison break story. Establishes that Jolyne is in prison for a crime she didn't commit, was deceived by her lawyer into taking a plea bargain for the crime, and was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in prison. Which of course means that she now has to figure out how to get out and prove her innocence and those kind of things. It's immediately set up, but it does also establish that somebody has set her up, and that she's now that she is now in prison for something somebody else did. So she's going to have to figure out who that is. Obviously the lawyer set her up, of course, but the lawyer was obviously paid by somebody. He was paid by Romeo's rich father. So there's an entire conspiracy there that's definitely being set up out of the gate. Somebody obviously wanted Jolyne to go to prison, specifically so that Romeo wouldn't go to prison. But it's clear that somebody was behind Jolyne going to prison. Somebody pulled there's somebody pulling the strings, obviously. And also the fact that somebody else got a hold of Jolyne's pendant from her father implies that there's going to be more shenanigans and that somebody else is going to start creating stand users in the prison, which is going to be a problem for a number of reasons. We saw how that played out in part 4, where somebody was using the stand arrow to give everybody their stands and those kinds of things. That was a problem last time. It's definitely going to be a problem this time as well. Somebody using the arrow to awaken stands. It does not work out well. It's going to be it's definitely going to be a big problem going forward. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. But, of course, I am excited. This is a fun series so far. I am enjoying, obviously, as I said, it does push the upper boundaries of what is allowed in Shonen Jump because, you've got a woman protagonist, immediately established that she, A, plays with herself when she thinks nobody's looking, and B, is also established to strip down naked when she wants. So she of course has no problem stripping down naked to humiliate the guards instead of the other way around. So it's Emilia, and of course it is interesting that like she is the first woman protagonist we've had, which I do find kind of like. They were obviously building to that, like there was obviously Araki has had issues with in the past of, you know, portraying women in a strong, confident roles. Like he's gotten gradually better at that. He started off with with a few minor women that weren't really involved. He got slowly better with that, where they introduced new characters that are kind of more confident and more powerful. And then now it's kind of, this is just kind of taking that to its logical extreme, being the first protagonist that's a woman, and the first sidekick that's a woman. So yeah, that is definitely going to be interesting going forward. Like we've had characters we had women stand users in the past. Like Par 5 literally had somebody who was a woman stand user. I think this is going to be the first time where we're going to have more women in the story, because we're already one woman more than we've already seen, and we're only one episode in. They're obviously going to build up more characters and more they're obviously going to build up the team a little bit more with more people. There's obviously going to be more antagonists. We are only starting to surface, but already the fact that they have a woman protagonist and her sidekick is also a woman is interesting to me. I do like that. That's very interesting. And I am looking forward to seeing it. I know I harped on Netflix at the start here, but I am looking forward to seeing where the rest of Stone Ocean goes. Because this is a fun premise so far, about a prison break story with a woman who is the daughter to the main protagonist of Part 3, who has been involved to an extent in every other part since then. So obviously there's gonna be something important coming up. So I'm interested to know what's going on. But in case and I am curious how they're going to continue his story. Obviously, he's gonna be important in this part, obviously. As Jolyne's father, and the fact that they're trying to get in contact with him, obviously he's gonna be important at some point. I'm curious how that's gonna play out. But honestly, for the time being, that's gonna do it for now. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys thought. I would appreciate that. Go and check out my Discord. We hang out there sometimes if you want to discuss things even further. Go hang out down there. Be sure to check out my Twitch. We stream Saturdays and Sundays. Please go check that out. If you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video, whereas the bottom video is based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. And also, finally, if you want to support me even further, then you can check out my Patreon. It's only a couple bucks a month, and it does help me out, and it helps me do more of this. So thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!